Hey boys and girls, good morning, happy afternoon, good afternoon, whatever time you're watching this video. Today is April 28th, and today for ELA, we are starting something new. So we are going to be starting what we call a novel study, and the book that we're going to be reading is called Because of Winn, Dixie. This is one of my favorite books. I got to read it when I was in third grade as well. So what is a novel study? A novel study is when we read a book together and we study its contents, and we're going to do activities that go along with it. So you guys are going to answer some questions. There might be some quizzes on certain chapters. You guys are going to hear me read. You might hear Miss Bennett read. You might hear Miss Register, Miss Smith, or Miss Taylor read chapters of this story. And then you guys are going to also read some of the chapters by yourself, but there's going to be questions that go along with every chapter. So this book, Because of Winn, Dixie, is by a woman named Kate DiCamillo, and we are going to meet the author in this video here. So let's watch this interview very quickly to see what we can learn about her.
My name is Kate DiCamillo, and I've written 4 novels, and I'll have a total of 6 kind of easy readers soon enough. The novels are Because of Winn, Dixie, Tiger Rising, Tale of Despero, and The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. And the easy readers are all about a pig named Mercy Watson. And I've just finished the 6th one in that series. And I've got a picture book that will come out this fall called Great Joy. So I'm kind of, I'm mostly novels, but I'm branching out into other things. I guess when I was in college and professors said, hey, you should think about graduate school. You've got a way with words. And I thought, super, I've got a way with words. I'm going to be a writer. I'll be rich and famous. And so then I bought a lot of black turtlenecks and started looking sophisticated and world-weary. And I spent the next 10 years that way until I realized that I wasn't going to be a writer unless I wrote something. So I didn't actually start until I was almost 30. But I decided that I wanted to do it in my 20s. Sad story. Wasted youth. I worked at Disney World, I worked at Circus World, I worked at a campground, I worked in a greenhouse. And the whole time I said, I'm going to be a writer, but I wasn't writing now. I mean, at the time, I was certainly a lost soul, but all of those kind of jobs at the margin of society were a profound influence on me and became a way of looking at the world. I became an outsider because the rest of my friends were moving along a very prescribed path, and I'd fallen off the track. And so it was actually a good thing. I didn't know that at the time, though, nor did I believe it. It's just like, man, I'm a loser. What a loser. I'm a loser. And then I would say, look down and watch your step, which is my job at Disney.
So she kind of felt like she was getting discouraged because her path wasn't planning out the way that she had originally planned it. She thought, I'm going to be a writer, but I don't really have to do much work to be a writer. I just have to wear these black turtlenecks and all. So she was around 20-something years old when she decided she was going to be a writer, but she didn't really start writing until she was around 30-something. So she kind of had to think to herself, I have to get started. I have to start putting some work into this if I want to be the writer that I aspire to be.
Why would somebody bother to keep on sending stuff out after that many rejection letters? I don't have an answer. It was just, I'd waited so long to start. A whole decade of my life went by with me talking about this is what I wanted to do, but not doing it, that I'd reached such a critical level of self-disgust that I didn't want to die saying I think I could have done it. And so since I was doing the work of telling the stories, it was an easy enough thing to then send the stories out and to keep on doing it. So I didn't have to say some 50 years hence, I think I could have done that. Well, I've been in so many writing workshops, writing classes, and to the right of me and to the left of me, there's always somebody much more talented than I am. And um, what I figured out is they're not willing to go through the rejection, which is enormous, and then the compromise that comes with, editing your work. And so I decided a long time ago that I didn't have to be talented. I just had to be persistent, and that was something that I could control, the persistence. I've always been kind of persistent. That was unbelievable, because the amazing thing about the Newbery is that as far as literary awards go, it's something that the layperson recognizes. It's people who aren't in the book world know that award and will pick up a book because of that award. And I, as a child, knew to look for that medal on a book, that it guaranteed me that I was going to like the book. And so to think that that would be on something that I had written, the first thing that I'd written.
So the medal that she's talking about, let me turn this camera on, is if we look at this book, there's a medal there. And this book won a medal. It's called the Newbery Honor Book. And she got it. She said this was the first thing that she wrote. And she got a medal on her first book. So imagine how that made her feel. Turn the camera back off.
There's no describing that feeling. Hysteria. That was I got the call. I can't remember where they were that year. It must have been on the West Coast because the call came relatively early. And I was hysterical, and then I went off to work at the bookstore. And it was a life-changing thing, and I hadn't even understood the implications of how it was going to change my life. I wrote because of Winn Dixie during what was at the time referred to as the worst winter on record in Minnesota, which is a considerable statement for Minnesota, which is roughly the equivalent of Siberia in climate. And because I'd grown up in Florida, it was a double shock to me.
So basically what she's explaining is she grew up in Florida, and by the time she moved to Minnesota, she was going through the worst winter in Minnesota. And think about Florida. Think about the climate in Florida. It's so warm there. And if she's going through the worst winter, imagine how that made her feel. Like, what are the things that she had to do?
We had a week where the high didn't go above 20 below. And so you walk outside and you open up your car door and pieces of it fall off because it's so cold. So at that point, I was thinking, I wonder what things are like in Florida. And so I was homesick, and it was the first long period of my life that I've been without a dog or access to a dog. And I desperately wanted a dog. So I made a dog up, and I went back to Florida. All of that happening without any conscious decision on my part. I can look back and see what was at work now, but then I just knew that I was longing for home.
So she had to spend a week indoors. She said it was more than that. She said there was about a week span where the temperature didn't get above -20. That's way below zero. And so she got bored, and she said this was the longest period of time where she went without a dog. So we can kind of relate to that a little bit with quarantine because, COVID-19 has kept us in our houses in the past. There was periods of time where we couldn't go out and do anything, and we got very bored. But with her boredness, she took her imagination and she thought back to Florida. She started thinking, wow, I really miss Florida. I miss a dog. I miss having a dog. And so in this book, because of Winn Dixie, it's her character lives in Florida, and her character finds a dog and all of the things. So she sort of took her imagination and she wrote this great thing.
And that I wanted to write a book. When I got to the set, they were filming scene with Dave Matthews playing a song for Opal in the pet store. And I'm not a weeper, but I sat there and just cried like a baby, which delighted Wayne Wang, the director. He was just like, he was so pleased. It's an astonishing thing because, you're in your little room, in your little apartment at 4:30 in the morning, making things up. And then all of a sudden, 5 years later, there it is.
So at this point, she's talking about her book was made into a movie. And I actually, when I was in third grade, the movie was just coming out in 2005. And so we read the book and then we took a field trip to watch the movie at the movie theaters. So that might be an option after we read this book. We may or may not be watching a movie. We're definitely not going to go to the movie theaters to see it. But yeah, so this book has been turned into a movie, and it's interesting. One of my favorite things about reading books and then watching the movies is I like to see how they compare to one another. We talk about comparing and contrasting. We like to talk about how the movies are the same and different. So we are going to read this book over the next couple of weeks, and then we're going to watch a movie.
In everybody's mind, in a way. So it was very, very unsettling and very moving. I always quote Dorothy Parker. I hate writing. I love having written. And so every morning, it's the first thing I do when I wake up. And every morning I wake up and think, oh God, I don't want to write today. But I just go ahead and do it anyway. And then for the rest of the day, I can think, oh, I got that done. And then I start the battle over again the next morning. Why do I write? Because life makes more sense when I write. Because even though it's a struggle for me every day, at least once a week, I'll be sitting there and a feeling will wash over me of this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I feel like I'm incredibly lucky that I get to do it. I feel like I'm incredibly lucky that I found what I'm supposed to do. And just because it's hard for me doesn't mean that it's not what I'm supposed to be doing. Anything teachers can do for the struggling readers in their classroom, read to them. I know that's incredibly hard to do now with standardized testing, that there's not enough time in the day to do that. But if you can read aloud, and parents, if it doesn't matter if the child is reading on their own, if you continue to read aloud with them each night. And again, for parents, if the child sees you reading a book for your own pleasure, rather than screaming at them to read for 15 minutes and then you're sitting out there watching TV, if you can model for them that it is a profoundly moving experience for you to read a book for yourself, then that, I think, will encourage the child to read. And beyond that, I don't know, because I was such a reader myself. You never had to beg me to read. It was how I made sense out of things, If you want to write, you should read a lot, and not only in a certain genre, but outside of what you're interested in. If you like realistic fiction, you should read fantasy. You should just read across the board. And if you want to write, you should write, which seems kind of like a no-brainer, but it took me about 10 years to figure it out. That means making some kind of commitment to doing the work of writing. If it's 2 pages a day, if it's a page a day, if it's, just some kind of goal that you set for yourself that's reachable. If you want to write, you should pay attention to people. Everybody has a story, and listen to people when they talk. Not because you want to steal their story, but because almost everybody's interesting if you give them the chance and if you ask them the right questions. So that's it. Listen, write, read. Pretty simple.
All right. So now what we're going to do is, if this will stop playing and let me go to the next slide, is so what other books have D'Amelio written. So we're going to visit her website and we're going to learn about her life. We're going to learn about more books that she's written, her writing process, and some different facts about her. So this says about Kate. So Kate was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, raised in Claremont, Florida, and currently lives in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm going to read it. Sorry, I'm just going to read what it says. I write for both children and adults, and I like to think of myself as a storyteller. Here are a few facts about me. I am short and loud. I hate to cook and love to eat. I am single and childless, but I have lots of friends, and I am an aunt to 3 lovely children, Luke, Roxanne, and Max, and one not so lovely dog, Henry. I think of myself as an enormously lucky person. I get to tell stories for a living. So here is what Kate looks like. Here's what she looked like at age 4 and early professional indications. So that means that, she was interested in this typewriter here. Here are some books that she has written, some picture books. So I want you to look at these. Maybe you've read some of these books. There is, you can click on each of them to read about them. She wrote A Piglet Named Mercy. She said in the video that all of her books are all of her picture books are about animals. Good Rosie, she also wrote. She wrote La La La. And some of these books are fairly new books. She wrote Great Joy. She wrote Louise, The Adventures of a Chicken. I think this one kind of sounds kind of funny, and the reviews on it are pretty great. Some chapter books that she has written, early chapter books. It won't let me get there. There. Some chapter books that she has written. She has written Leroy Ninker Saddles Up. She has written quite a few of them. Here's where she says all of her early chapter books are about a pig named Mercy Watson, the pig. Bink and Golly. I think I've seen some students carry those books around. Some novels that she has written are Beverly Right Here, Louisiana's Way Home, Rhyme Nightingale, Flora and Ulysses. I believe there was a movie about this that just came out. I think it's on Disney Plus, possibly. The Magician's Elephant, The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. I have read this book. It's about a rabbit named Edward who was pleased with himself. He was owned by a girl named Albeline who treated him with utmost care and adored him completely. And then one day he went missing. Tale of Desperado, The Rising, and the one that we are reading, Because of Winn, Dixie. And this book has won awards. And look at all of these comments about it. She has also written other books called anthologies. She has written these 2 as well. She wrote about the White House. And she has also written about the Chronicles of Harris Burdick. I've never read that, but could be interesting. So there are some questions that people can ask her. You can submit questions and she might read them. So here are some questions that Kate has answered that she's asked all the time. So this says, is Because of Winn-Dixie a true story, and are you India Opal Bulani? She says, Because of Winn-Dixie is fiction, which means I made the whole thing up. She is not Opal. Opal is a better person than she is. She said, where did you get the idea for Because of Winn-Dixie? I wrote Winn-Dixie because during the worst winter on record in Minnesota, I was cold and lonely and homesick for Florida, where she grew up. I couldn't afford to go home, but I could write a book that took me there. Also, it was the first time in my life I had been without a dog. I was living in an apartment where no dogs were allowed, but there weren't any rules about imaginary dogs, so I made a dog up. The best dog I could think of, a smelly, friendly, big old mutt. And there are different, you guys are free to visit this website if you would like to read more about her. And these are her thoughts about writing. So I'm not going to read this either. She said, here are some things. I'm going to read these bottom ones. Her tips are right. She said, this may seem like an obvious piece of advice, but there are a lot of people, and I was one of them, who think somehow that they can be a writer without doing the work of writing. Make a commitment to yourself to write a little bit, a page, a paragraph, 2 pages every day. Then you're going to rewrite. You can't expect to sit down and write something golden and beautiful. You can, however, reasonably expect a piece of writing to get better each time you rewrite it. So, like when your teacher says, all right, you're going to write something as a rough draft and then you're going to go and rewrite it. Don't write the same exact thing over again. Writing means rewriting. She says it here. I cannot emphasize this strongly enough. Writing means rewriting. You are going to have to rewrite. Read. A lot of people want to be writers, but you have no business being a writer unless you're a reader. You should read fantasies and essays, biographies, poetry, fables, and fairy tales. Read, 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 read. Also, look. It says look around the world. Pay attention to details. Open your heart to what you see. Listen. Listen to people when they talk. Everyone has a story. Eavesdrop. Join in conversations, ask questions, and pay attention when people answer them. And last but certainly not least, one of the most important things is to believe in yourself. There's no right or wrong way to tell a story. This is one reason that writing is so wonderful but terrifying. You have to find your own way. Be kind to yourself, listen to other people, and then strike out on your own. If you make a mistake, make it on your own. Don't make a mistake because someone else made the mistake. All right, so that is all for this video. What you're going to do is you are going to click on your assignment, read the directions, and you are going to start that. All right, boys and girls, have a great day. See you guys tomorrow. Bye.